Hello everyone, this is the introduction part of the 68 stories of telecommunication history video. I made this video with the purpose of sharing something useful to everyone who wish to kill time and watch something which is not possibly harmful. Most of the information gathered are based on some of the lecture notes I received during the days at Polytechnic University in Japan, and thanks to Japanese government connected with Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare. But I'm sorry in advance for not being able to guarantee the accuracy of the information displayed during this presentation. Nowadays, history and truth is not there for everyone free of charge. Many can argue, but how could someone possibly know what is the right origin and information? I did not have a possible answer either, but after watching this presentation, at least you can decide where to look for the most accurate information. So this presentation will be conducted using an electronic voice called Scott, and let's start with the presentation. Okay, hope you enjoy this one.
Hello Sasika, let me introduce myself to your friends. I am Scott, Sasika's electronic assistant for today's presentation. Sasika told me that his English accent is not fast enough to conduct a long presentation. That is why he has picked me to do the presentation today. Hello friends, let me start with the etymology of the word telecommunication. The word telecommunication is a compound of the Greek prefix tele and the Latin word communicare. Greek prefix tele means distant, far off, or afar, and the Latin word communicare means to share or to make common. Therefore, the word telecommunication means distant communication. Today, I will give a brief overview on the step-by-step development of various forms of telecommunication. I will also explain how each invention contributes to further development of the modern-day telecommunication. Let me take you 221 years back from now. It all began in year 1800 with the discovery of steady electric current. Number 1. Year 1800. Invention of the first electric battery by Volta. Year 1800 in Italy, Alessandro Giuseppe Antonio Anastasio Volta found that when two different metals are separated by a solution which reacts chemically with one of them, an electric current flows along a wire joining the two metals. He made the first voltaic cell from discs of zinc and copper separated from each other by discs of porous paper soaked in salt solution. It was called the voltaic pile and it was the first source of steady electrical current. Modern-day telecommunication equipment heavily depend on electrical energy as the power source. Therefore, discovery of the electric battery can be identified as the beginning of the era of modern-day telecommunication. Number 2. Year 1820. Discovery of magnetic effects of electric current by Ørsted. Year 1820 in Denmark, Hans Christian Ørsted discovered that electric currents produces a circular magnetic field when they flow through a wire. The earliest known surviving descriptions of magnets and their properties are found from Greece, India, and China. But with this discovery of Ørsted, it becomes obvious that a magnetic field can also be generated and controlled by an electric current. This was one of the most important turning points before the discovery of self-sustained electromagnetic waves. Number 3. Year 1822. Discovery of Seebeck effect by Seebeck. Year 1822 in Germany, Thomas John Seebeck discovered that when two junctions of two dissimilar metals are kept at two different temperatures, an electrical current is induced. Later, in 1834, Peltier proposed vice versa of the Seebeck effect. Modern-day telecommunication satellites are having a nuclear thermal generator inside and can use that heat to create a decent amount of voltage from Peltier modules. Number 4. Year 1825. Ampere's law for force between two conductors was introduced by Ampere. Year 1825 in France, André-Marie Ampère defined the law for force between two conductors. Further continuing Ørsted's experimental work, Ampere showed that two parallel wires carrying electric currents attract or repel each other, depending on whether the currents flow in the same or opposite directions. This discovery laid the foundation of electrodynamics and creation of electrical measuring equipment such as the galvanometer. Number 5. Year 1827. Ohm's law was introduced by Ohm. Year 1827 in Germany, Georg Ohm found that the potential difference across the ends of many conductors is proportional to the current flowing between them. This, he found, was a direct proportionality, provided that the temperature remained constant. When temperature remained constant, resistance stays constant, and the voltage can be expressed as the product of resistance and current. This law became the base for all the electrical and electronic circuit calculations. Number 6. Year 1831. Electromagnetic induction was discovered by Faraday. Year 1831 in United Kingdom, Michael Faraday discovered that electromotive force is induced in one wire, due to the changing magnetic field created by the current in another wire. As per Faraday's discovery, changing magnetic flux could create an electromotive force which will lead to an induced current flow. And the magnitude of that induced electromotive force is equal to the rate of change of magnetic flux. He also discovered generation of a steady direct electrical current by rotating a wire between the poles of a permanent magnet. This was the first modern electrical generator. Faraday's experiments led to the invention of modern electrical motors, generators and transformers. Number 7. Year 1834. Lenz's law for induced electricity was introduced by Lenz. Year 1834 in Russia, Heinrich Friedrich Emil Lenz further experimented on Faraday's discovery and proposed the direction of the induced current caused by the electromagnetic induction. As per Lenz, the direction of an induced electromotive force is always such that it tends to set up a current opposing the change of flux responsible for inducing that electromotive force. This explanation of Lenz became the basis of the electromagnetic technologies we use today. Number 8. Year 1837. Morse code was invented by Morse. Year 1837 in United States of America, Samuel Morse invent the Morse code which became the base for early stage telegraphy. It is a method used in telecommunication to encode alphabetical characters to standardized sequences of two different signal durations, dots and dashes. It is said that earliest design for a code, Morse had planned to transmit only numerals, and to use a codebook to look up each word according to the number which had been sent. However, the code was soon expanded by Alfred Vail in 1840 to include letters and special characters, so it could be used more generally. Number 9. Year 1841. Invention of the first alphabetical output telegraph machine by Wheatstone. Year 1841. In United Kingdom, Charles Wheatstone obtained the patent for his telegraph machine, which gives an alphabetical output. His telegraph system employed 6 wires and actuated 5 needle pointers attached to 5 galvanoscopes at the receiver. If currents were sent through the proper wires, the needles could be made to point to specific letters and numbers on their mounting plate. However, this system was not widely used as it was complicated. Number 10. Year 1851. Establishment of first undersea telecommunication cable crossing English Channel by Brett Brothers. Year 1851. In United Kingdom, John Watkins Brett and Jacob Brett established the first successful undersea telecommunication cable crossing the English Channel. Their submarine telegraph company between France and England became operational from London through Dover and Calais to Paris. Messages were transmitted through the submarine cable from Calais to Dover, the narrowest point in the English Channel. Number 11. Year 1859. Invention of the first lead-acid battery by Plant. Year 1859. In France, Gaston Plant invented the first lead-acid battery, which is rechargeable and inexpensive. Later lead-acid battery was further developed by Thomas Edison. These batteries soon became a stable power source for motor vehicles and mobile telecommunication equipment. Number 12. Year 1860. Invention of the first speech transmitting telephone by Reis. Year 1860. In Germany, Johann Philipp Reis invented the first speech transmitting telephone, which became the first telecommunication equipment of transmitting sounds from one place to another. Reis named his device the telephone, but Reis had no interest in profiting from his telephone. It is said that he freely gave away information on it to anyone who asked, and sold models of it at a reasonable price. Number 13. Year 1866. Invention of the first self-excited AC power generator by Siemens. Year 1866. In Germany, Ernst Werner von Siemens invented the first self-excited AC power generator. This is a generator without permanent magnets. An electric generator consists of a rotor spinning in a magnetic field. In the past, this magnetic field was produced by permanent magnets, which was comparatively expensive and needed maintenance. Siemens proposed that this magnetic field can be produced by field coils as well. In the case of a generator with field coils, a current must flow in the coils to generate the required amount of magnetic field. This current is fed by the generator's own output. With this innovation, electrical power generation became more efficient and reliable for any required purpose, including telecommunication. Number 14. Year 1873. Prediction on radio waves by Maxwell. Year 1873. In United Kingdom, James Clerk Maxwell showed mathematically that self-sustained electromagnetic waves could propagate through free space. He proposed that the speed of electromagnetic waves in a vacuum become equal to the speed of light. As per Maxwell, light is also a form of electromagnetic waves. But Maxwell could not prove the existence of electromagnetic waves. Number 15. Year 1876. First commercial cable telephone was invented by Bell and Gray. Year 1876 in United Kingdom, Alexander Graham Bell, and in United States of America, Elisha Gray, invent the telephone. The popular belief was that Bell arrived at the patent office an hour or two before his rival Elisha Gray. However, after this invention, telephone soon becomes a household equipment. Number 16. Year 1888. Discovery of electromagnetic waves by Hertz. Year 1888 in Germany, Heinrich Rudolf Hertz demonstrated a method for producing and detecting the self-sustained electromagnetic waves, or what we call radio waves. Between 1886 and 1889, Hertz conducted a series of experiments that would prove the existence of Maxwell's predicted electromagnetic waves. He documented his results in his paper, On Electromagnetic Effects Produced by Electrical Disturbances in Insulators. His paper, released in 1888, showed that electromagnetic waves travel at a finite speed over a distance. Number 17. Year 1889. Direct dial was invented by Strowger. Year 1889 in United States of America, Almond Brown Strowger patents the direct dial. With this feature, caller can connect to any user outside the local area without operator assistant. Before Strowger's invention, telephone calls outside local area were manually connected as shown in the picture. Number 18. Year 1893. Introduction of complex number phasor representation by Steinmetz. Year 1893 in United States of America, Charles Proteus Steinmetz systematized the use of complex number phasor representation in AC circuit calculations. Before Steinmetz, this analysis had to be carried out using calculus, a difficult and time-consuming process. Steinmetz reduced the very complex alternating current theory to a simple problem in algebra. The key concept in this simplification was the phasor, a representation-based complex numbers. By representing voltages and currents as phasors, Steinmetz was able to define a quantity called impedance and then use it to determine voltage and current magnitude and phase relationships in one algebraic operation. Number 19. Year 1895. First successful wireless telegraphy experiment by Popov. Year 1895 in Russia, Alexander Stepanovich Popov succeeded first wireless telegraphy experiment. This early-day equipment was called Popov's lightning detector. Most Eastern sources regard Popov's lightning detector as the first radio receiver. However, there is no evidence Popov sent any type of message on that occasion. Again in March 1896, he effected transmission of radio waves between different campus buildings in St. Petersburg. Number 20. Year 1897. First cathode ray tube display was invented by Braun. Year 1897 in Germany, Carl Ferdinand Braun built the first cathode ray tube, or CRT, which was a modification of the Crookes tube with a phosphor-coated screen. Cathode rays are emitted from the cathode or negative electrode and they travel in a straight line. When these cathode rays hit the phosphor-coated wall, it glows. Furthermore, cathode rays can be deflected or controlled by using a magnetic field. In CRT displays, cathode rays are generated and deflected to form letters or pictures. Soon CRT display technology became the cornerstone in developing fully electronic television and oscilloscope. Number 21. Year 1901. First successful wireless transmission crossing the Atlantic Ocean was conducted by Marconi. Year 1901 in Italy, Guglielmo Giovanni Maria Marconi succeeded the first wireless transmission crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Marconi and his assistant, George Kemp, confirmed the reception of the first transatlantic radio signals. With a telephone receiver and a wire antenna kept aloft by a kite as shown in the picture. They heard Morse code for the letter S transmitted from Poldhu, Cornwall. Their experiments showed that radio signals extended far beyond the horizon. Number 22. Year 1902. Ionosphere, E region was discovered by Heaviside and Kennelly. Year 1902 in United Kingdom, Oliver Heaviside and Edwin Kennelly together discovered the ionosphere. The ionosphere is part of Earth's upper atmosphere, where extreme solar radiation ionizes the atoms and molecules, thus creating a layer of electrons. Heaviside and Kennelly, independently, and at approximately the same time, announced the probable existence of a layer of ionized gas high in the atmosphere that reflected radio waves. Formerly called the Kennelly-Heaviside layer and now called the E region. E region is one of the several layers of the ionosphere. Longer wavelength radio waves got reflected off from E region, a property which allows those waves to curve around the Earth and be propagate to distant places on the Earth. Number 23. Year 1904. Invention of the thermionic vacuum tube by Fleming. Year 1904 in United Kingdom, John Ambrose Fleming invented the first thermionic vacuum tube or the two-electrode diode. This component works as a diode and restricts the current flow to one direction. Thus, enables rectification in electronic circuits. Thermionic vacuum tubes were used in radio receivers and radars to convert the alternating current radio signals into weak direct currents detectable by telephone receivers. They were used for many decades afterwards, until superseded by semiconductor technology. Number 24. Year 1906. Invention of the first three-pole vacuum tube or triode by Forrest. Year 1906 in United States of America, Lee de Forest, invented the first three-pole vacuum tube or triode. This component works as a transistor and used in radio circuits for amplifying the receiving signal. Triodes were widely used in consumer electronic devices such as radios and televisions until the 1970s. After that, semiconductor transistors replaced the triodes. Number 25. Year 1906. Amplitude modulation or AM radio technology was invented by Fessenden. Year 1906 in Canada, Reginald Fessenden succeeded experimenting amplitude modulation radio technology. Amplitude modulation or AM is a modulation technique used in electronic communication for transmitting a message with a carrier radio wave. In amplitude modulation, the amplitude of the carrier wave is varied in proportion to that of the message wave. This amplitude modulation was the earliest modulation method used for transmitting audio signals in radio broadcasting. Number 26. Year 1912. Superheterodyne receiver was invented by Armstrong. Year 1912 in United States of America, Edwin Armstrong invented the superheterodyne receiver. A superheterodyne receiver, often shortened to superhet, is a type of radio receiver that uses frequency mixing to convert a received signal to a fixed intermediate frequency, so that it can be more conveniently processed than the original carrier frequency. Basically, all modern radio receivers use the superheterodyne principle. Number 27. Year 1918. Enigma was invented by Scherbius. Year 1918 in Germany, Arthur Scherbius invented the Enigma, which was the first successful data-encrypted telecommunication equipment. Enigma was further developed in 1923 by Scherbius and Ritter Company. By 1933, German Army had acquired the manufacturing rights to Enigma. It was used by the German military command to encode strategic messages before and during World War II. Number 28. Year 1925. First television was invented by Baird. Year 1925. In United Kingdom, John Logie Baird invented the television and succeeded the first television transmission in his lab. He gave the first public demonstration of moving silhouette images by television at Selfridges department store in London. In 1929, using BBC frequencies, John Logie Baird broadcast some of his first experimental television broadcasts from studios near Covent Garden in London. Pictures were in black and white, created by mechanical means using a scanning disc, consisting of just 30 lines definition. Number 29. Year 1927. First successful transatlantic telephone call from UK to USA was conducted. Year 1927. In United Kingdom and United States of America, British General Post Office and America's Bell Labs conducted the first transatlantic telephone conversation between London and New York. This telephone call was held between the President of America's Bell Labs, Walter S. Gifford, and the Secretary of the British General Post Office, Sir Evelyn P. Murray, and this was the first long-distance wireless telephone conversation using radio waves. At this early stage, wireless telephone technology was too expensive for general public. Number 30. Year 1933. Frequency modulation or FM radio technology was invented by Armstrong. Year 1933. In United States of America, Edwin Armstrong developed the frequency modulation or FM radio technology. In FM, unlike AM, the amplitude of the carrier wave is kept constant, but its frequency is altered in accordance with the variations in the audio signal being sent. For this reason, FM is less susceptible than AM to certain kind of interference, such as that caused by the thunderstorms as well as random electrical currents from machinery and other related sources. That is because these noise-producing signals affect the amplitude of a radio wave, but not its frequency. As a result, FM made possible the first clear, practical method of high-fidelity broadcasting. Number 31. Year 1947. First transistor was invented. Year 1947. In United States of America, Walter H. Brattain, John Bardeen and William Shockley are credited for inventing the transistor. A transistor is an electronic component that can be used as part of an amplifier, or as a switch. And it is made out of semiconductor material. Before this invention, role of the transistor was carried out by triodes. Triodes consume a large amount of electrical energy during operation and comparatively unreliable. Semiconductor transistors used much less energy and lasted many years longer. Number 32. Year 1956. First transatlantic telephone cable was established. Year 1956. In United Kingdom and United States of America, first transatlantic telephone cable was established. First voice call was conducted between the chairman of the American Telephone and Telegraph Company, AT&T, New York and Postmaster General of Britain, in London. Before installation of this cable, international calls by radio telephone had been possible since 1927. But the cost was so high. Telegraph cables were also there, but they lacked the ability to transmit clear voice signals. This cable, installed in 1956, had been constructed with a built-in amplifiers that could be wired into the cable at intervals. With that amplifier method, there was a remarkable improvement in the quality of the voice calls. Number 33. Year 1957. First telecommunication satellite was launched. Year 1957 in Russia, Sputnik 1 was launched on 4 October 1957 under the Sputnik program, with Sergei Korolyov as chief designer. Sputnik 1 helped to identify the density of high atmospheric layers through measurement of its orbital change and provided data on radio signal distribution in the ionosphere. Soon, Sputnik 2 was launched on 3 November 1957 and carried the first living passenger into orbit, a dog named Laika. Number 34. Year 1958. First integrated circuit was invented by Kilby and Noyce. Year 1958 in United States of America, Jack Kilby and Robert Noyce developed the first integrated circuits. These two people had the idea for an integrated circuit at almost exactly the same time. Jack Kilby was working at Texas Instruments when he discovered that all parts of a circuit, not just the transistor, could be made out of silicon. At the time, nobody was putting capacitors and resistors into ICs. Kilby had built a working model, and on February 6, Texas Instruments filed a patent. Meanwhile in California, Robert Noyce was working at the small Fairchild Semiconductor startup company. He also realized a whole circuit could be put into a single chip. On April 25, 1961, the Patent Office awarded the first patent for an integrated circuit to Robert Noyce while Kilby's application was still being analyzed. Today, both men are acknowledged as having independently conceived of the idea. Number 35. Year 1959. MOS-FET was invented. Year 1959 in United States of America, Martin Atalla and Dawen Kang invent the first MOS-FET at Bell Labs. MOS-FET stand for metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistor. Before the invention of MOS-FETs, task was carried out by the BJTs or bipolar junction transistors. BJTs are current controlled. They require a biasing current to the base terminal for operation. But MOS-FETs are voltage controlled. They do not require a biasing current for operation. For that reason MOS-FETs consume comparatively less amount of energy than BJTs. Using MOS-FET technology, electronic circuits became more compact and reliable. Number 36. Year 1963. Use of optical fibers for communication was proposed by Nishizawa. Year 1963 in Japan. Junichi Nishizawa proposed the use of optical fibers for communication while working at Tohoku University. Fiber optic communication is a method of transmitting information from one place to another by sending pulses of infrared light through an optical fiber. Later, in 1965, a German physicist, Manfred Borner, developed the first working fiber optical data transmission system and obtained the patent for it. Number 37. Year 1964. Invention of the first modern fax machine. 1964 in United States of America, Xerox Corporation introduced LDX, long-distance xerography, an invention that is considered the first commercial version of today's fax machine. This device used the telephone transmission for sending and receiving information. Number 38. Year 1965. First experimental email sent in MIT. Year 1965 in United States of America, first experimental email sent in Massachusetts Institute of Technology (MIT) between the users of a mainframe computer. MIT used an IBM 7094 mainframe computer to demonstrate one of the first MIT-developed time-sharing operating systems, called the Compatible Time Sharing System or CTSS. This CTSS allowed its users to log in from one terminal and exchange messages with other users. Another example is Auto-DIN system created in the early 1960s, which had the similar facility of sending electronic messages between its users. Number 39. Year 1969. First successful experiment of computer networking. Year 1969 in United States of America, first successful experiment of computer networking was conducted by Advanced Research Projects Agency or ARPA, which belongs to United States Defense Department. This was a project to connect computers at key research sites across the United States using telephone lines. The first hosts connected during this experiment were Stanford Research Institute (SRI) and University of California at Los Angeles (UCLA). And this connection between SRI and UCLA was called the ARPANET. This became the first time to experiment packet switching. The ARPANET's technology and deployment laid the foundation for the development of the Internet. Number 40. Year 1971. First email over a network was sent using the ARPANET. Year 1971 in United States of America, Raymond Tomlinson writes the first electronic message program to send a message from one IMP computer to another IMP computer using the ARPANET network. IMP or Interface Message Processor is a small computer which enables access to the mainframe computer. In early days, computer networks were created by connecting these IMPs together. ARPANET is such a network. However, Tomlinson's electronic message program had a specific address for every user to identify each other. He is the one who develops the user host convention, choosing the to identify an electronic message address. Number 41. Year 1973. First experimental handheld cellular phone call was conducted by Cooper. Year 1973 in United States of America, Martin Cooper, a Motorola researcher and executive, made the first handheld cellular phone call from handheld communication equipment. Early-day mobile telephones were installed in motor vehicles and they were not handheld phones. Cooper became the first person to demonstrate the operation of a handheld phone. The prototype used during his phone call weighed 1.1 kilograms and offered talk time of 30 minutes. Number 42. Year 1973. Ethernet concept was developed by Metcalfe. Year 1973 in United States of America, Robert Metcalfe's Harvard Ph.D. thesis outlines idea for Ethernet. The concept was tested on Alto computers at Xerox Corporation's Palo Alto Research Center in California. The first Ethernet network connecting multiple computers and a laser printer was called the Alto Aloha Network. In 1973, Metcalfe changed the name of that network to Ethernet. Number 43. Year 1976. Apple Computers was established by Jobs and Wozniak. 1976 in United States of America, Steve Jobs and Stephen G. Wozniak together establishes the Apple Computers and roll out the Apple I. According to the Stanford University, it is the first personal computer with a single circuit board. In 1976, when Wozniak was an engineering intern at Hewlett-Packard Company, they showed no interest to Wozniak's idea of building his own microcomputer. Wozniak then, 26 years old, together with a former high school classmate, 21-year-old Steve Jobs, started a computer company at Jobs' family garage. Jobs sold his Volkswagen minibus and Wozniak his programmable calculator to obtain the working capital for Apple Computers. Apple Computers later becomes one of the most innovative computer makers in the world. Number 44. Year 1977. Number of first-generation personal computers hit the market. Year 1977. In United States of America, several manufacturers introduced the first generation of personal computers. Among them were the IBM 5100, Radio Shack's TRS-80, Commodore PET, and Apple II. This was the time when people got interested on buying computers as a multitasking equipment. Soon, personal computers become the most convenient tool of telecommunication. Number 45. Year 1979. First-generation automatic analog cellular phone system or 1G was introduced by NTT. Year 1979. In Japan, Nippon Telegraph and Telephone Public Corporation introduced the first-generation automatic analog cellular phone system or 1G for motor vehicles in Tokyo. At this time in United States of America, a 1G system was developed by AT&T and Motorola. This system was called the Advanced Mobile Phone System or AMPS. Even though AMPS was the first 1G network, NTT became the first to deploy their 1G network to car phones. Number 46. Year 1983. Introduction of the TCP/IP and birth of the Internet. Year 1983. In United States of America, Advanced Research Projects Agency Network or ARPANET standardizes itself on the newly adopted TCP/IP protocols, and part of it becomes public by connecting with different networks. This ARPANET-based large public network becomes known as the Internet, and January 1, 1983 is considered the official birthday of the Internet. Prior to this date, the various computer networks did not have a standard way to communicate with each other. A new communications protocol was established called Transfer Control Protocol, Internetwork Protocol (TCP/IP). This allowed different kinds of computers on different networks to talk to each other. ARPANET officially changed to the TCP/IP standard on January 1, 1983, hence the birth of the Internet. Number 47. Year 1983. Domain Name System and SMTP mechanism was introduced for email. Year 1983. In United States of America, Jonathan B. Postel and Paul Makapatris of University of Southern California's Information Sciences Institute (USCISI) and Craig Partridge of Bolt Beranek and Newman Corporation (BBN) developed the Domain Name System (DNS) and recommend the use of user@host.domain addressing system for emails. In 1981, Jonathan B. Postel published the document RFC 788 on Simple Mail Transfer Protocol or SMTP. With SMTP and newly introduced Domain Name System, emails became fast and reliable. Number 48. Year 1983. First personal computer with Graphical User Interface or GUI was introduced by Apple. Year 1983. In United States of America, Apple Computers introduces Lisa, the first personal computer with Graphical User Interface or GUI. It also features icons and drop-down menus. In 1979, Jobs had led a team of engineers to see the innovations created at the Xerox Corporation's Palo Alto, California, Research Center, PARC. There they were shown the first functional graphical user interface, GUI, featuring on-screen windows, a pointing device known as a mouse, and the use of icons, or pictures, to replace the awkward protocols required by all other computers. Apple immediately incorporated these ideas into new personal computers. And the Lisa was born. Number 49. Year 1983. First commercial handheld cellular phone enters the market. Year 1983 in United States of America, Motorola introduced the first commercial handheld cellular phone Dynatac 8000X to the market. At the time this phone was launched, there was a 1G mobile network by Ameritech. This phone had a talk time of just 30 minutes and took 10 hours to charge, but consumer demand was strong despite the battery life, weight and low talk time. Number 50. Year 1984. First .com domain name was registered. In 1984 in United States of America, Jonathan B. Postel published the document RFC 920 on the requirements of establishing a new domain in the ARPA Internet and the DARPA research community, setting the stage for the birth of .com. And, the first .com domain was registered several years before the World Wide Web would mark the formal beginning. There are two basic types of DNS servers, primary, which contain the databases, and secondary, which retrieve information from primary databases. The basic form of this structure is the name of a machine, followed by a top-level domain, TLD, separated by dots. For example, Wikipedia.com has the domain name, Wikipedia, and the top-level domain com. The most common type of top-level domain is a generic one such as com, g.o.b, or e.d.u. There are also country code TLDs, such as UK, CA, or A. Number 51. Year 1985. Windows Computer Operating System was introduced by Microsoft. Year 1985 in United States of America, Microsoft Corporation introduced the famous Windows operating system for IBM-compatible PCs. Windows enabled GUI for IBM PCs. For the first time, Windows allowed DOS users to visually navigate a virtual desktop, opening graphical windows, displaying the contents of electronic folders and files with the click of a mouse button, rather than typing commands and directory paths at a text prompt. Number 52. Year 1990. HTML was developed and introduced by Berners-Lee. Year 1990 in United Kingdom, Tim Berners-Lee, a researcher at CERN, the High Energy Physics Laboratory in Geneva, develops Hypertext Markup Language (HTML). In 1989, Berners-Lee drew up a proposal for creating a global hypertext document system that would make use of the Internet. His goal was to provide researchers with the ability to share their results, techniques, and practices without having to exchange email constantly. Instead, researchers would place such information online, where their peers could immediately retrieve it anytime, day or night. Berners-Lee wrote the software for the first web server, the central repository for the files to be shared, and the first web client, or browser, the program to access and display files retrieved from the server. Number 53. Year 1991. Second-generation digital cellular network 2G was launched. Year 1991 in Finland, second-generation digital cellular network or 2G was launched for the first time. This network was called the Global System for Mobile or GSM. Since the introduction of 2G cell phones, various enhancements have been made in order to provide data services and applications such as internet browsing, two-way text messaging, still image transmission, and mobile access by personal computers. Number 54. Year 1992. First modern-era portable computer was launched by IBM. Year 1992 in United States of America, IBM ThinkPad 700 laptop computer was created. It was lightweight compared to its predecessors and had a nickel metal hydride battery that lasted almost 4 hours. This computer came out in 3 variants as 700, 700C and 700T. Both the 700 and 700C were based on the 25 MHz Intel 486 SLC processor with 4 MB of memory and 120 MB hard disk drive. This computer shaped the future for portable computers. Number 55. Year 1993. First smartphone concept was introduced by IBM. Year 1993 in United States of America, IBM Simon was introduced. IBM Simon was a mobile phone, pager, fax machine and PDA all rolled into one. This was possibly the world's first smartphone. It included features like calendar, address book, clock, calculator, notepad, email and touch screen with a QWERTY keyboard. It had a stylus, used to tap the touch screen. One of the most remarkable features of Simon was the predictive typing that would guess the next characters as you tapped. Number 56. Year 1996. Google search engine was developed. Year 1996 in United States of America, Sergey Brin and Larry Page developed the Google search engine at Stanford University. It is a computer program that answers to queries and help find a specific information on the World Wide Web. In 1998, Google search engine was officially launched. Until then, World Wide Web was a largely unorganized collection of information sources. Google made it easy to identify reliable pages by ranking them according to the number of other pages that refer to them, or by identifying authorities to which many pages refer, and by identifying hubs that refer to many pages. Number 57. Year 1998. Mobile satellite handheld phones were introduced. Year 1998 in United States of America, Motorola's Iridium system, which is the first commercialized satellite-based communication system, was introduced. The goal of these satellite systems is to permit ready connection to the public switched telephone network or PSTN from anywhere on Earth's surface, especially from areas not presently covered by cellular telephone service. Number 58. Year 1999. Wi-Fi technology was introduced. Year 1999 in United States of America, the term Wi-Fi becomes part of the computing language and users begin connecting to the Internet without wires. Wi-Fi was introduced as a method of wireless Ethernet or local area networks to operate without cable or wiring. But later, Wi-Fi was used to provide wireless broadband internet access for many modern devices including laptops, smartphones and tablet computers. Number 59. Year 1999. Peer-to-peer file sharing was launched by Napster. Year 1999 in United States of America, peer-to-peer file sharing was introduced to the general public when American college student Fanning created the music sharing service Napster. In a peer-to-peer network, each computer acts as both a server and a client, supplying and receiving files, within the bandwidth and processing distributed among all members of the network. Such a decentralized network uses resources more efficiently than a traditional network and is less vulnerable to systemic failure. Number 60. Year 2001. Third-generation digital cellular network or 3G was launched by NTT Docomo. Year 2001 in Japan, NTT Docomo launched the first commercial 3G mobile network using the WCDMA technology. Data speed of 3G is 2 megabits per second comparing to 2G's 64 kilobits per second. The main technological difference that distinguishes 3G technology from 2G technology is the use of packet switching rather than circuit switching for data and voice transmission. 3G enabled the functions such as video conferencing, mobile TV and GPS. 61. Year 2003. Voice over Internet Network Protocol (VoIP) technology was introduced. Year 2003 in United States of America, Voice over Internet Network Protocol or VoIP technology was introduced. VoIP works by converting sound into a digital signal, which is then sent over a data network such as the Internet. The conversion is done by a device, such as a personal computer (PC), or special VoIP phone, that has a broadband Internet connection. The digital signal is routed through the network to its destination, where a second VoIP device converts the signal back to sound. Because of the digital nature of VoIP, call quality is normally much higher than that of a standard telephone. Another advantage is that VoIP frequently costs less than standard telephone for long-distance service. Number 62. Year 2003. Skype video calling software was launched. Year 2003 in Scandinavia, Niklas Zenström of Sweden and Janice Fries of Denmark together introduced the Skype software. Skype is a computer software for communication over the Internet, which includes voice, video and instant message capabilities. Basically, Skype is also another face of Voice over Internet Network Protocol or VoIP. But it is handy to use. Unlike many VoIP services, Skype uses a decentralized peer-to-peer (P2P) network, in which all connected computers share processing tasks and bandwidth, allowing its capacity to scale in tandem with its user base. This P2P technology was retained by JOLTID, a company founded by Zenström and Fries. Number 63. Year 2003. The first 64-bit microprocessor was introduced by AMD. Year 2003 in United States of America, Advanced Micro Devices Corporation or AMD releases the Athlon 64 microprocessor to the consumer market. Information in computers is normally represented in bits, a binary sequence of ones and zeros. The more bits you have, the more information you can represent. And lot of computer hardware components don't work with a continuous flow of data, but rather processes the data in chunks, limited by a certain bit size which is called the word size. A processor is similarly limited by its word size. This word size determines the amount of information that can be processed in one go. Therefore, 64-bit processor is a processor which has a word length of 64 bits. Several decades ago, there were only 32-bit processors designed with a word length of 32 bits. It seemed plenty, but the introduction of the 64-bit processor made a remarkable change in computer technology. The industry is now in a transitional period between 32-bit and 64-bit computing. Number 64. Year 2004. Facebook's social networking website was launched. Year 2004 in United States of America, Mark Zuckerberg, Eduardo Saverin, Dustin Moskovitz, Chris Hughes, were all students of Harvard University at the time Facebook was founded. Soon, Facebook became the largest social network in the world. Access to Facebook is free of charge, and the company earns most of its money from advertisements on the website. New users can create profiles, upload photos, join a pre-existing group, and start new groups. The site has many components, including timeline, status and news feed. Users can chat with each other and send each other private messages. Users can signal their approval of content on Facebook with the like button, a feature that also appears on many other websites. Facebook made a remarkable change in the way of connecting with people. Number 65. Year 2005. YouTube video sharing website was launched. Year 2005 in United States of America. Steve Chen, Chad Hurley and Jod Kareem, three former employees of the American e-commerce company PayPal, together registered the YouTube website for sharing videos. Their intention was to allow ordinary people to share their home videos. However, the immense growth in traffic at YouTube created its own set of problems. The company continually had to purchase more computer equipment and more broadband connections to the internet. In addition, YouTube was forced to allocate more financial resources for potential litigation, as many media companies discovered that some of the videos uploaded to YouTube contained copyrighted material. With limited success in commercializing its website or containing its growing costs, YouTube began looking for a buyer. In 2005, search engine company Google had launched a video service, Google Video, but it failed to generate much traffic, and Google was prompted to purchase YouTube for $1.65 billion in stock in November 2006, rather than merging the websites. However, Google continued YouTube's operation as before. Today, YouTube is the second most visited website on the planet. Number 66. Year 2005. Android was acquired by Google and developed. Year 2005 in United States of America, Google acquires Android, a mobile phone operating system. Android starts in 2003 to develop operating system for digital cameras. But in 2004 their project changed to become an operating system for smartphones. After Google purchasing Android in 2005, Android team decided to base their project on Linux, an open-source operating system for personal computers. In 2007 Google create consortium with dozens of technology and mobile phone manufacturers in order to develop and promote Android as a free open-source operating system with support for third-party applications. The first cellular telephone to feature the new operating system was the T-Mobile G1, released on October 22, 2008. In 2012, Android became the most popular operating system for mobile devices, surpassing Apple's iOS. And in 2020, about 75% of mobile devices on Earth run Android. Number 67. Year 2007. iPhone was launched by Apple. Year 2007 in United States of America, the iPhone brings many computer functions to the smartphone, combining the mobile telephone, digital camera, music player, web browser and personal computing. This device was first released in the United States in 2007. The iPhone was subsequently released in Europe in 2007 and Asia in 2008. Apple designed its first mobile smartphone to run the Mac OS X operating system. The device's most revolutionary element was its touch-sensitive multi-sensor interface. The touchscreen allowed users to manipulate all programs and telephone functions with their fingertips rather than a stylus or physical keys. For its innovative design in the handheld computing market, the iPhone was named Invention of the Year in 2007 by Time magazine. Number 68. Year 2015. Apple Watch was released by Apple. Year 2015 in United States of America, Apple releases their smartwatch to the market. Smartwatch is a small smartphone-like device worn on the wrist. This device can connect to a smartphone and notify the user of incoming calls, email messages and notifications from applications. The user can operate this smartwatch through a touch screen and a physical button combination. And it also supports many futuristic applications like pedometers and heart rate monitors to help users track their health.